My name is Chloe Hayes, and when I was 29, I inherited a secret that would change my life forever. Just as I was starting a new chapter with my husband, Ben Carter, my grandmother, June, left me 3 incredible properties on Cape Cod. I chose to keep this a secret, trusting a gut feeling I couldn't explain. And it's a good thing I did, because just 1 week after our picture-perfect wedding, my mother-in-law Eleanor arrived on my doorstep with a lawyer and a stack of legal documents. That gut feeling didn't just save me from a family feud. It protected my entire future. Before we get into the story of how Eleanor Carter almost walked away with everything, I'd love to know where you're all watching from. Drop a comment below, and don't forget to subscribe if you've ever had to draw a line in the sand to protect what's yours. New scene, flashback, soft, warm lighting. Grandma June's wisdom. My grandmother, June, was my everything. Born in 1938, she was a true New Englander, stoic, practical, and fiercely independent. When my grandfather, a fisherman, was lost at sea in 1965, the town expected her to sell their small cottage and move in with relatives. But that wasn't June's way. Never let anyone else hold your purse strings, Chloe, she'd tell me over a cup of tea in her cozy, sea-weathered kitchen. Not a husband, not a banker, not your own family. Instead of relying on others, Grandma June took a job cleaning the summer homes of the wealthy families who flocked to the Cape each year. She saw how they lived, how they invested, and how they built their fortunes. Quietly, she started saving, and during the market downturn of the late 70s, she bought her first rental property, a small cottage just a few blocks from the beach. Over the years, she bought 2 more, fixing them up herself and managing them with a sharp mind and a steady hand. I never knew the extent of her success. To me, she was just Grandma June, who smelled of salt air and cinnamon, and who taught me how to find the best sea glass on the beach. When she was diagnosed with a terminal illness, I moved back to the Cape to care for her. In those final months, she started sharing her life lessons. "I've built a good life, Chloe," she said one evening, as we watched the fishing boats return to the harbor. "Soon, it will be yours. Be smart with it." I thought she meant the cottage we were sitting in, maybe a small savings account. The truth, revealed at the reading of her will, was staggering. "To my granddaughter, Chloe Hayes, I leave my entire real estate portfolio," her lawyer, Mr. Davies, read. He slid a folder across the table, and inside were the deeds to 3 paid-off properties on Cape Cod. A charming 4-bedroom in Chatham valued at over $1.5 million, a waterfront condo in Provincetown worth nearly $1 million, and her own beloved cottage in Hyannis, valued at around $600,000. "I don't understand," I stammered. "Your grandmother," Mr. Davies said with a smile, "was one of the savviest women I've ever known. She wanted you to have a life of your own making." The rental income from the 2 larger properties brought in nearly $10,000 a month after taxes and expenses. I kept her cottage as my home, a constant reminder of the incredible woman who had given me this gift of independence. New scene. A bustling city coffee shop, Chloe and Ben. A whirlwind romance. I met Ben Carter 6 months later. I was still grieving and completely overwhelmed by my new responsibilities. He knew I'd inherited my grandmother's cottage, but I kept the rest of the portfolio to myself. It wasn't about distrust. It was about caution. I'd had a past boyfriend who saw my good credit as a shared resource, and I wasn't eager to repeat that mistake. Ben was different. He was a rising star at his family's prestigious Boston law firm, sharp, witty, and incredibly driven. Our connection was instant. We fell into a whirlwind romance, fueled by late-night talks, spontaneous weekend trips, and a shared dream of a future together. He proposed on a snowy evening on the Boston Common, with a stunning diamond that was a Carter family heirloom. I said yes, without a moment's hesitation. As we celebrated that night in my little Cape cottage, the words were on the tip of my tongue. I wanted to tell him everything. But that same quiet voice, Grandma June's voice, whispered, "Be smart with it." I held back. New scene. An opulent dining room in a Boston brownstone. The Carter dynasty. The Carters were Boston royalty. Ben's father, Lawrence, was a senior partner at the family law firm, a pillar of the community. His mother, Eleanor, was a formidable woman who sat on the boards of multiple charities and cultural institutions. She had never worked, having inherited a significant fortune from her own family, the formidable Lowell dynasty. Dinner at their Beacon Hill brownstone was an exercise in subtle interrogation. Eleanor, dressed in a perfectly tailored silk blouse, regarded me with an unnervingly sharp gaze. "Chloe," she said, her voice smooth as polished silver, "Ben tells us you work for a small non-profit. How fulfilling." She made fulfilling sound like unprofitable. "And you live in your grandmother's little cottage on the Cape?" she continued, a faint, unreadable smile on her lips. "It's so important to hold on to family history, isn't it?" Her questions were relentless, circling constantly back to my family, my background, and my financial situation. I gave polite, vague answers, feeling more like a specimen under a microscope than a future daughter-in-law. The wedding planning was a clash of cultures. Eleanor pushed for a grand affair at the Boston Public Library, catered by the most exclusive firm in the city. I wanted a simple ceremony on the beach, near my grandmother's cottage. We compromised on a beautiful but still extravagant event at a historic Newport mansion. Eleanor and Lawrence paid for most of it, a fact Eleanor mentioned frequently. A Carter wedding is an investment in the family's reputation, she explained. New scene, Chloe and Ben in their Cape Cod cottage post-honeymoon. Whispers and red flags. The first weeks of marriage were idyllic. We settled into my grandmother's cottage, and Ben's easygoing nature seemed to smooth over the tensions with his family. But the red flags soon appeared. You know, this cottage is great, Ben said one afternoon, but it's not a long-term solution. When we have kids, we'll need to be in the city, closer to the right schools. We can sell this place and use the money for a down payment on a proper home. His assumption that I would sell my grandmother's home, the heart of my inheritance, sent a jolt of alarm through me. I explained its sentimental value, but he seemed to view it as just another asset. My family has always believed in leveraging assets for growth, he said. That's how the Carters stay Carters. Eleanor began a routine of dropping in on her way to their summer home in Nantucket. Each visit was a masterclass in passive aggression. She'd bring expensive hostess gifts, a cashmere throw because mine looked a bit worn, a set of crystal glasses to replace my charming but everyday set. During one visit she told me, you know, my family money was the seed that allowed Lawrence to grow the firm into what it is today. A strong marriage is a financial partnership, a merging of assets for the good of the family line. The final straw came at a Carter family dinner. Lawrence was discussing a complex real estate case. Drawing on my own recent experience, I made a comment about zoning variances on the Outer Cape. Eleanor froze, her fork halfway to her mouth. You seem to know a great deal about Cape Cod real estate, Chloe. I felt my cheeks flush. I've just picked a few things up managing the cottage. The cottage? She repeated slowly. Which is a condominium, isn't it? I heard someone at the club mention the new bylaws at that complex. I had made a mistake. My grandmother's cottage was a standalone home, but the condo in Provincetown was part of a complex. I had mixed them up. I quickly corrected myself, but Eleanor's eyes held a new, calculating glint. A week later, I overheard her on the phone in the garden. Her voice low and urgent. I need a full asset search on June Hayes. Yes, the estate. There's more there than a simple cottage. This is a matter of family security. My blood ran cold. When I confronted Ben, he was dismissive. You're overreacting. Mom is just being thorough. She's protective of the family. It's what she does. But I knew this was more than thorough. I immediately called Mr. Davies, my grandmother's lawyer. We need to make sure my inheritance is untouchable, I told him. He assured me the trust June had established was solid, but we added several more layers of legal protection, creating a fortress around my assets. I was preparing for a battle, and I had no idea how soon it would arrive. New scene, Chloe's cottage, the doorbell rings. The ambush. Ben was in London for a week-long conference. I was secretly relieved, looking forward to a break from the escalating tension. 2 days after he left, my doorbell rang. It was Eleanor, dressed in a Chanel suit, looking completely out of place on my rustic porch. Beside her was a stern-looking man in a pinstripe suit. Chloe, darling, she said, breezing past me into the house. I do hope we're not intruding. This is Mr. Abernathy, our family's lead counsel. We have some important family matters to discuss. They sat on my sofa as if they owned it. Mr. Abernathy opened his briefcase and laid out a thick stack of documents. As you know, Chloe, Eleanor began, her voice dripping with condescension, the Carter family consolidates all assets into a single trust. It's for tax purposes and to ensure the family fortune is protected for future generations. She gestured to the papers. We've taken the liberty of drawing up the paperwork to transfer your assets into the Carter family trust. It seems your grandmother was quite the little investor. 3 properties. How remarkable for a woman of her station. I stared at her, my heart hammering against my ribs. You had me investigated. It was a routine check, dear. And now, as a Carter, your assets belong under our management. Our team can manage them far more effectively than some small-town Cape lawyer. Mr. Abernathy pushed the documents toward me. If you'll just sign here, Mrs. Carter. I looked at the signature line. This document would give Eleanor and Lawrence complete control over everything my grandmother had worked her entire life to build. Did Ben approve this? I asked, my voice shaking with barely controlled rage. Ben understands his duty to this family, she said coolly. Just then, my phone rang. It was Ben. I put him on speaker. Hey, how are things? He asked, his voice cheerful. Mom said she was dropping off some documents from the wedding planner. Your mother is here, I said, my voice ice. With Mr. Abernathy? They're trying to get me to sign over my inheritance to the Carter family trust. There was a long silence on the line. What inheritance? Eleanor jumped in. Ben, darling, I was just explaining to Chloe the wisdom of protecting her assets. Her grandmother left her 3 very valuable properties. 3 properties? Ben sounded completely stunned. Chloe, what is she talking about? Grandma June left me this cottage and 2 rental properties, I said. I kept them in a separate, premarital trust. And you never told me? The hurt in his voice was a physical blow. We can talk about that later, I said, my focus on Eleanor. Right now I want to know if you knew your mother was coming here to ambush me while you were out of the country. Mom, what the hell are you doing? Ben's voice was sharp. I'm on the next flight home. Don't you do anything. After he hung up, Eleanor's mask of civility dropped. You have made a grave mistake, Chloe. You have jeopardized your place in this family. My place in this family doesn't require me to give up my financial independence, I shot back. We shall see, she said, her voice a low threat. As she swept out the door, she turned. Think very carefully about your next move. Being a Carter comes with expectations. Refusing to meet them has consequences. The moment she was gone, I double-bolted the door and called Mr. Davies. My fortress was about to be put to the test. New scene. The cottage, the next day. Ben and Chloe are arguing. The reckoning. Ben arrived looking like he'd been through a storm. You should have told me, Chloe. And you should have warned me that your mother was a corporate raider in Chanel, I retorted. The fight that followed was the worst of our lives. He felt betrayed by my secret. I felt betrayed by his family's entitlement and his blindness to it. Over the next week, Eleanor unleashed her army. First, Ben's sister, Catherine, arrived with a bottle of wine and a lecture on family unity. Then came his father, Lawrence, who called Ben into the city for a chat that ended with a veiled threat about Ben's future at the firm. In this family, Lawrence had said, we are either all in or you are outs. The pressure was immense. Ben started drinking more. The easy laughter we'd shared replaced by a heavy silence. One night, he finally broke down. My mother did this before, he confessed, his voice thick with shame, to my aunt, her own sister. Aunt Sophie inherited some incredibly valuable paintings from their mother. Eleanor insisted they belonged in the family trust. Sophie refused. What happened? I asked softly. Eleanor found a way to cut her husband's business out of a major deal. They almost went bankrupt. They moved to Vermont. We haven't seen them in 10 years. The cruelty of it took my breath away. And you stood by and let that happen? I was 20, Chloe, he said, looking at me with haunted eyes. I didn't understand, but I understand now. I don't want to be my father, just enabling her to keep the peace. I don't want that for us. It was the breakthrough we needed. The next day, we started couples counseling. The therapist helped Ben see the toxic patterns he'd grown up with, and helped me understand the fear that had driven my secrecy. Armed with a new understanding, we made a plan. It was time for a confrontation. New scene. The cottage. Chloe and Ben sit opposite a tense Eleanor. A new foundation. We invited Eleanor to the cottage. We sat her down, a united front. Mom, Ben began, his voice steady. Chloe's inheritance is hers. It will remain in her trust. Period. Eleanor's face tightened. You are throwing away generations of family strategy for this girl. She is my wife, Ben said firmly. And you will treat her, and her assets, with respect. Those assets could save this family. Eleanor finally burst out, her composure shattering. The Chatham property alone is enough collateral. The truth came tumbling out. Lawrence had made a series of disastrously high-risk investments, using the firm's capital to cover his losses. He was on the verge of being exposed, facing disbarment and financial ruin. They were desperate. They needed my inheritance to secure a private loan and cover up the scandal. So this wasn't about family unity, I said. It was about a bailout. Eleanor, stripped of her pretense, finally broke down. She wept, not with elegance but with the raw despair of a woman whose perfectly curated world was collapsing. In that moment, seeing her vulnerability, I made a choice. We will help you, I said, looking at Ben, who nodded in agreement, but on our terms. Our terms were non-negotiable. Lawrence had to step down from the firm and enter a program for his compulsive risk-taking. Ben would leave the family firm and accept a position he'd been offered at a rival company, one he'd earned on his own merit. And Eleanor had to cede all financial decision-making to a professional management team. And, I added, she had to apologize to her sister. New scene. A sunny beach on Cape Cod. Chloe and Ben are walking, hand in hand. Chloe is visibly pregnant. The truest inheritance. A year later, life was unrecognizable. Ben was thriving at his new job. His father was in recovery, and his parents were slowly, painfully, rebuilding their relationship on a foundation of honesty instead of secrets. Eleanor, humbled and stripped of her power, had reconnected with her sister. She was trying. And me? I had kept my properties, their value a quiet testament to my grandmother's wisdom. But the experience had given me a new perspective. That spring, Ben and I established the June Hayes Foundation, a non-profit dedicated to providing financial literacy grants to young women in New England. My grandmother's legacy wouldn't just be property, it would be empowerment. One evening, as we sat on the porch of the cottage, watching the sunset paint the sky, Eleanor called. It was the first anniversary of Ben's aunt's return to the family. There was a warmth in her voice I had never heard before. After he hung up, Ben turned to me, his eyes shining. "Grandma June gave you an inheritance of property," he said, placing a hand on my growing belly. "But you, Chloe, you gave my family an inheritance of integrity. I can't think of anything more valuable to pass on to our child." And as the waves crashed on the shore, I knew he was right. The 3 properties were a gift, but the wisdom to protect them, the strength to fight for them, and the grace to use them for good, that was the true inheritance. Voiceover CHLOE. Thank you for joining me on this journey. It's a powerful reminder that true independence isn't just about money. It's about having the courage to set boundaries and live by your own values. Have you ever had a moment that tested your resolve? Share your story in the comments below. And please like and subscribe for more stories about navigating life's biggest challenges. Remember, build your own foundation and you'll be able to weather any storm.